Hello, everybody. It's Michael Hollands once again for Sound of the Movies. Today I have the pleasure to be joined by the great Patrick Doyle. On today's episode, we will talk about his collaboration with director Kenneth Branagh and also cover their latest film called Death on the Nile. It is my great pleasure to welcome the brilliant Patrick Doyle.
Thank you, Michael, for that very flattering introduction. Great pleasure to talk on your program and to meet you.
Great. It's such a pleasure to have you on my show, and I'm really excited today. And of course, I would like to talk about Kenneth Branagh, as I also mentioned in my introduction. You have worked on many pictures, starting with Henry V. You scored Hamlet, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Cinderella, Murder on the Orient Express, Jack Ryan, Shadow Recruit, and now, of course, Death on the Nile. What do you enjoy most about his films or about Kenneth's personality? What is your special connection with him, your longtime collaborator?
Well, he's a man of great art, intelligence, and wit, and a great imagination and good fun, great fun. And we have a shorthand language that we have developed over the years, over 30 years now. And each film, I've been very fortunate. They're all very different, great diversity in terms of the genres. And he works extremely hard and makes great demands on himself, as indeed do I. So he's as passionate as anyone could be about film, and equally my passion extends as the same as his. So we both love what we do and give it our all and take it very seriously. He's a man of great vision, great discipline, and quite an extraordinary, prolific person. It's difficult to keep up with him.
Yes, I bet it is difficult. And I mean, he's had a great output. You've had a great output throughout your career, and you have a tremendous filmography as well. As you have such a great rapport with Kenneth, may I ask you if you ever turned down somebody else's project in order to be able to work with Kenneth instead?
Well, no, all the schedules have worked out well. It's just coincidentally. It's all worked well. So no, it's been I've been very fortunate that way.
When you start working with him, and also especially on Death on the Nile, do you focus on certain key areas of the film, or do you like to just score it chronologically, step by step?
Well, I read the script, and the Michael Green screenplay is terrific, and all the stage directions, as it were, are very clear, and the characters are so well rounded that that itself is inspiring. And then when I see the shots, I actually saw the cut of the picture and the sheer opulence and excitement and majestic quality of it, and the intrigue and the twists and the turns were very inspiring for a composer. And the majestic pyramids of Giza pyramids, and the fact it was a crime of passions, crimes, sorry, of passions, plural, film. All of these are great inspirations, great costume design and camera work and edit. So I like to write, if I can, chronologically, and then I can create the arc of the movie as I'm going along. It's very nerve-wracking, just even though I've worked with Ken all these years, I still get very nervous.
Okay.
Goes up to any project. It's no matter who I work with, I still feel as if it's my first film again. So it's never because every film is so different that it's always pressure, as I'm sure it is with any person who's been working for over 30 years, as I have done. The trouble is, the more you know, the more pitfalls you can see ahead of you. So far, it's worked out very well. He was very happy with the work I did, and so was I, and both very proud of the picture. And I was very proud of my work for him.
Great. And this is Kenneth's second adaptation of Agatha Christie's novels. I mean, obviously the first one was Murder on the Orient Express, and now Death on the Nile. And both films, I think, also show great respect for the original version, because I think it's very hard. I mean, it would be kind of, or quote unquote, pointless to just remake a movie and just, create a new version by using everything which has been done before, doing a shot by shot remake, so to speak. So these two films are not necessarily vastly different, but there is a difference when compared to the original, which was shot and released 30 years ago. So treating the original score, or Nino Rota's original score, with respect, or let's say do something which has equal quality, may have been an aspiration for you as well, right?
Well, I'll be very honest with you. I haven't seen either of those pictures.
Really?
When they first came out in the 70s, I never saw them in the cinema. And as life would have it, I've never caught them on TV since. So and now I look forward to watching these pictures. Now that this film has finished, I didn't deliberately not watch them. Okay. So I can honestly say with a hand on my heart that I approached this work with Ken in a fresh way, and in no way was I influenced by the other two versions of these two films. I'm a great admirer of Richard Rodney Bennett and Nino Rota, and in particular Nino Rota's score for The Godfather. He's a phenomenal writer. I love that kind of bold operatic writing. That kind of writing today would be accused of being too on the nose, which is an expression I really have very little time for. What is on the nose and what is like behind the nose or beside the nose? Should music just creep in? But I love the entrance, not the kind of, but the strong, bold entrances often of that music in, for example, The Godfather. So he was never shy. He never held back as a composer. Murder on the Orient Express was a revenge film.
Yes.
And as you know, this film, Death on the Nile, is a very, very different stories.
Yes.
The same author and same screenplay writer, but completely different stories. So they really, one isn't a sequel. It doesn't fall into that category, I don't think. I never thought about it as a sequel. I was asked in another interview about being a sequel. It never crossed my mind. It's a completely different entity. And equally, when I did Henry V, my very first film with Kenneth, I never saw the Olivier version until after I had scored Henry V. I saw it 2 weeks after I recorded it. I saw it in London at a special anniversary screening. Obviously, a completely different approach to it was less paginistic and it was less jingoistic. This was a sort of mid-war movie. It was about it was really about slightly empirical, not empirical, empire. That's not what it was about. That sort of medieval chivalric approach to the film, whereas Ken's was very much a 20th century approach, blood and guts, and showing the horrors of war, not the glorification of war, which was the case in Olivier's version, but a fabulous picture for its time. And but I never, not deliberately, I never saw this. Yeah, I saw many films at school. We had very often the school I attended would show either in the school films or we would go and see films. I remember seeing Macbeth, King Lear, and I'm fortunate that I approached this very fresh with Kenneth.
That's an interesting point, and thank you very much for elaborating on that, Patrick. It's an interesting point because I think it may have been a great advantage, actually, to not have a preconceived idea. To start with a clean slate, so to speak.
Yeah, then no one can say, the the approach from that the same point of view. When I can honestly say, hand on my heart, I haven't seen these pictures, and I look forward to seeing them. But no, it was definitely a fresh, clean slate approach.
I really love movies of that kind. The whodunit and the whole scenario, a private detective trying to solve a mystery, and you have many prime suspects and
Yes.
people that come across as, let's say, the actual perpetrator, but it turns out they were just an innocent bystander, and also vice versa. So
Yeah.
those movies offer a lot, and I really enjoyed Kenneth's remakes on those two films, and especially Death on the Nile also has a lot going for it. There's a beautiful cinematography, the editing, the pacing, and of course your score fit like a glove, no question about it. So all of those elements combined make for an interesting cinematic experience. So that's really, really pleasant, and I think you can be proud of your accomplishment there.
Thank you. It really is about all the arts. It's about Harris Zambalukos, about Una's editing, and Michael Green's screenplay. And of course, all brought together with Kenneth Branagh playing Hercule Poirot in a brilliant way, as well as spearheading the production as a director. It's quite a phenomenal sort of dual achievement. It really is a team effort. It's all the different artisans and artists, rather, involved in the picture. Everyone is chipping in and working in harmony.
Of course, the film features many interesting characters, actually.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
would you say, whenever you approach a film, or especially Death on the Nile, that your music is more character based and oriented, or do you like to reflect the story? Or do you try to find a balance? How do you usually work?
Well, it's always tricky when you try to find the heart of the film. It's always a slightly anxious time, but usually it only lasts for a couple of days. And once you start to drink in the film and really look at it closely, rather than just glancing through it as you would a viewer, but you've got to really study it. But my scores are two things: narrative and character driven. It's not rocket science. It's the arc of the story, and how it blossoms and how it progresses towards a denouement,
Mm-hmm.
in both of these pictures, particularly in Death in the Nile. And really, the characters are the roots, generally speaking, of thematic material, whether it's color, whether it's a particular kind of instrument, coloration, or a small theme, or a motif, or a
Mm-hmm.
grand motif, depending what's at play. So there are character themes. There's a there's a theme for Lynette Ridgway. There's a theme for Jacqueline de Belfort.
Mm-hmm.
It's a prominent theme. And of course, there's a theme that covers the Gaza pyramids when we first see them, and that also features in it. And I also had the opportunity to take the feeling of all of these different thematic ideas and motifs and create a suite which goes over the end title of the film, and this passionate string elegy. But they all stem from little ideas
Mm-hmm.
that grow and grow and grow. I always think of Beethoven's Fifth, when that great man, who would think that the opening of the Fifth Symphony, who would think that those little figures could be spun into one of the greatest symphonic conventions
Yeah.
ever? It's become such an iconic work, as most of his oeuvre is. So really, that's very often the way I work. More than often, that I find a little thematic idea, but also the coloration and the orchestration is very important. With this kind of film, the score had to be, slightly more downplayed and underplayed and under characters. There are long sort of talking scenes where the score has to bubble underneath, but also contrastingly beautiful opportunities for these beautiful vistas and exciting action sequences, and this youthful energy and excitement that permeates the film, that gave the scores and an opportunity to do its thing and to add to the wonderful drama that was established by all the other departments. But very much the characters drive the score without a doubt.
And that's also interesting, Patrick, because you're making a great point here. You need to find an area of the film, any scene, which kind of requires a bold approach, and you need to find the subtext, which requires a delicate approach, be it a
Yes.
piano tune
Yes.
versus a grand orchestral score. I think that can be really tricky to really find the balance and to find a common ground with a director who is on the same page. And
Yeah.
then you have to, let's say, wrestle with certain ideas in order to eventually get there.
I mean, sometimes the drama is enough on its own, and there's enough drama in the performance and in the scene. So the score sits back and bubbles underneath. Other times there are transitional moments in a film that need help from the score, lifting you from one moment to the next. So you can suddenly come from a part of the ship to the appearance of these wonderful tombs in Egypt on the banks of the Nile. And this is a sort of sweeping moment for the orchestra to take the audience along, literally on a trip with these rather bourgeois rich people on this luxurious holiday. Yes, it's a gift for a composer. This kind of film, it's rich, it's beautiful looking, great story, terrific acting, wonderful editing, beautiful costumes, great writing and great directing by Kenneth. So it's the thing is, it's so rich in all those departments. Your job is to come in and be another character. Very often, directors refer to the score as another character, which in fact I agree with. The score does become another character. I remember one director, Richard Benjamin, great person, a great director. He said, "When I hire a composer, it's like hiring another star actor." It's a very, very powerful. It can always be in the wrong hands. You can always be a second director if you're not careful in terms of not overstating your case, but allowing the director's work and the performances to do their thing. And you should really just be the composer. Should be the icing on the cake.
Yes, and that's very true. I too tend to believe that choosing the right composer is absolutely essential, because to me the music is just as important as the editing, as the cinematography, as the actors, as
Well,
the directing.
well, yes, it's interesting. I mean, it's very much film music is now in the UK, and I can't speak for Germany and but certainly in France. In America and France, for example, has always had a great admiration for film music.
Yes.
Although perhaps not in France, not the sort of classical world, although they begin to embrace it now. The UK was the same, and they began to sort of now you have on Radio 3, for example, the BBC Radio 3, they now play film music and they approach it in a completely different way. The snobbery aspect is beginning to disappear, which is rather gratifying, because when I first began, it was very much sort of the pauper of the world of music, classical music. But in America, there's always been this wonderful sort of appreciation of the importance of film music. It was every bit as important as the visuals and the cut and all those other wonderful elements. So it's now film scores are now big business for orchestras, and many film concerts. Hopefully now more now that COVID's over, or begin to dissipate. So it's I've seen a great change in the understanding and appreciation of film music. I'm doing. Fortunately, I have a body of work, and I'm doing. At least until COVID, I was doing many concerts. So
Yeah.
which I'm just beginning to. I'm discussing coming back to do more, especially when my birthday's coming up. So hopefully there'll be an evening of fun for that.
Right. And you're absolutely right. about the impact of film music, and it should be treated with the utmost respect. And
Yes,
there has been a surge in demand for cinema concerts and so on. So
yes,
that's a great trend, and I really love that. The whole experience and the beauty of film music can be experienced in the concert hall, and
yes.
that's just magnificent.
Well, I think if it's now that I mean, I bet there are many scores which are often synth-driven and with a mixture of symphonic, and there are very good fine arrangements made for live performance. It's a very different thing playing a synth score unless it's a particularly synth-driven concert. It's full of pyrotechnics and all sorts of things, and that's what the sound is. But in terms of symphonic music mixed with synth music, there's a certain amount of re-orchestrating must take place, um, and which is great. In my case, because in most cases I write with a view to the music not only first and foremost serving the picture, but having the ability to be played acoustically live. So in my case, it's less of a task in preparing for the concert because it's in the studio. It's the same as in the concert. Likewise, John Williams has written in the traditional symphonic style world, which indeed is my also the case with myself. It's just the point of interest. It's not absolutely necessary, but in my case, it saves a lot of busy work afterwards when people ask for a particular piece. I have it already in place acoustically. So there's very minor adjustments are made for a concert performance.
Great. And thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on that, Patrick. I would like to come back to Hercule Poirot, brilliant detective
Yeah.
of the film. How would you describe him in musical terms? I mean, he's a brilliant detective, also somewhat conceited fella. He thinks very highly of himself. And how would you describe him in musical terms?
Well, he's also there are moments in both, especially in Death and Nile, there are moments where you see him reflect on his own life, looking back through his life. So he's actually, as well as being a very flamboyant and very confident, with this extraordinary obsession with perfection and symmetry and organization and refinement and artistry. He's also very, in his own way, quite vulnerable. So you see many facets of his personality, which Kenneth does brilliantly. So um, he's not completely the arrogant creature that he comes across as, and very confident. There are many different light and shade moments in that his character possesses. In terms of the score for Death in the Nile, really the music captured the characters around Poirot. It never really, in this score, it played all the other characters around him rather than playing him, because really it's about the story and all these people and these kinds of passion. So, um, in Murder at Orient Express, there was slightly more of Poirot's story in another way, sort of running parallel to the main crime of passion story. So there was more reflection in that, but this one is definitely about him as the fulcrum in the middle of all this excitement and energy and intrigue and twists and turns and machinations of crimes of passion.
There are a couple of cues on the album, which is now available, of course, which really stood out to me personally in terms of composition, in terms of sheer emotion, which they brought across. The Cost of Love and the Bourgeois Nightmare, those are my two favorite cues on the album.
I'm glad you had to remind them because I've put the titles in. I've forgotten where they are. You'd have to remind me. But it was a while ago since I scored it. But no, I'm glad you enjoyed it. But really, I suppose the titles reflect the emotions in these moments of music. I particularly enjoyed writing for the the pyramid moment, only because that's almost like a boyhood dream. But I never had possessed. I never ever thought I would be. I never planned to be a film composer. It was never in my plan in life. I didn't know what my plan was going to be anyway. Um, at a very early age, I saw Bridge over the River Kwai, and I saw this huge spectacle and thought, "Wow, this is music's great." And many films when I was young, I was blown away by the sweeping orchestral music. So this when this wonderful moment comes up with the pyramids, the Giza pyramids, it was pretty scary actually approaching. I thought I wanted to try and bring something fresh to it, give you a sense of the Middle East in the opening phrase, and also the grandeur of these wonderful man-made spectacular inventions, and also of course the gravitas and the mystery that is about to unravel throughout the film. So I had to try and capture all that in that opening sequence, coming up from the water and out in from the Nile and out into to reveal. So never an easy task. Once it's done and everybody loves it, it's playing beautifully, you forget the pain. It's never easy. And I think you can ask any composer who's worth his or her salt, and they'll tell you it's not an easy process. It's a fresh, new, demanding job every time.
Yes. And I can see that. I mean, oftentimes a composer may feel you have run out of ideas or you have a new project and it's you just wrapped one project. How will I recharge my battery in order to come up with something meaningful, and will I be able to please the producer or the director? So
Yeah.
it can be very, very tough, I reckon. And of course also to reflect the story and to reflect the surroundings, the pyramids, Egypt, the beauty of this part of the world. And
Yeah.
yeah, those are challenges in their own right. So that's really tricky, and I think you captured that beautifully. And you also brought in some choir elements. I think it was the Q Abu Dhabi, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
Abu Dhabi, the monuments at Abu Dhabi. Yes, yes, it was. Ken was very keen, which you have a sense of antiquity, real ancient antiquity. And of course, there's nothing more ancient and primal than the human voice, the first musical instrument I would imagine, apart from man or early woman whacking the ground with a piece of bone or a stick or something to create a reverberating sound, whether it's off a log or on a rock or whatever, or a splash in the water, some percussive effect. But certainly, the human voice clearly was I would imagine the very first instrument. Is the most glorious. I love the human voice, and I love opera, and I sing myself. I've sung professionally myself. I come from a family of singers, great singers, and both my daughters are lovely singers. Although they're sung in movies, but they don't do it professionally. They do it for me, for fun. I definitely think that that was it was Ken asked, can we have voices? Of course, I think that would be that's a great call. It gives you a sense of mystery, great power, um, and darkness, and something primal. Killing is a very primal thing, and it's horrifying. It is clearly a very horrific thing. So the
Yeah.
guy, the that particular scene gave you a sense of foreboding and darkness and
Yes.
the ancient.
Yes. I mean, it was a crime of passion, but a crime is a crime, and of course.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously the law looks differently in France, for example, but in the end, it's a taking of someone's life, which is unforgivable, really.
Patrick, was there any specific or impactful scene and or character for you personally? I mean, we already established that the focus isn't necessarily on Kenneth Branagh, Mr. Poirot's character, so everybody is basically equally important. So, but is there any character which stood out for you personally?
Jacqueline de Belfont, she's a fairly strong character, and Lynette, of course, Kenneth playing Hercule Poirot is central as almost like the circus master. He's searching and seeking and foraging to find evidence. That became very exciting. I liked very much when he was flying on the ship trying to find out about the first murder. You know, I love those sort of action moments. But I love also the pyramids I mentioned earlier. They were a character that I loved. But you know, they were all the characters were very, very strong and very inspiring. So as a collection, as a community of great acting, they were all equally important. And you cannot, in order to complete this jigsaw, you have to absolutely pace and bring in all the characters in order to create the final collage and the arc of the score.
Right, thank you. And of course, sometimes you have to work around certain scenes in order to, let's say, stay in the background in order to make sure you support the scene perfectly and the character, but sometimes you just need to take a step back in order to really complete the picture.
Yeah, because in a movie like Death on the Nile, it's important that you don't give the story away. And you just nudge the audience along a particular direction, because obviously, having read the script and watching the picture, I know the twists and turns and what happens. So your job is to do some lateral thinking, and make sure that that nothing is revealed in the score. Everything plays along with what everyone sees on the screen, and that you just enhance the tension, the twists and turns, and the mystery and the intrigue, and the ambiguity and excitement.
And sometimes I think the musical score can guide the audience through a picture. If you listen closely, then you will just realize, okay, something may be lurking in the shadow. This may happen. This may... Yes. I mean, sometimes people say, well, the music is on the nose or it shouldn't manipulate the audience. I've always hated the term musical manipulation, because to me that is exactly what you are supposed to do.
I think okay, one of the greatest manipulators of all time is, you know, well, one of them is Richard Wagner. You can talk about all the operas of Puccini. They spend the score is entirely manipulative. The Pastoral Symphony manipulates you it makes you by the very name, it brings you to the country, and it plays on your emotions, your love of the country. I think to me it's slightly lazy to use this terminology, on the nose, or it's, you know, a camera. The camera is there, and immediately it manipulates the audience. It shows a scene with a moving river, and then it moves down to see a reflection in the water, and suddenly you hear a splash, and then a gasp, and then the audience are terrified, and they realize, oh my goodness, there's a silent killer, and innocent people who are out for a walk are being killed. Right away, you're manipulating. So if you don't like to be manipulated, then don't go to the cinema.
Absolutely right. Those were the perfect closing thoughts. And Patrick, I would like to thank you for taking so much time out of your busy schedule. I really appreciate that. And I would also like to thank you for your wonderful, wonderful and brilliant contributions to the world of cinema. You have a huge fan base. Many people love your music, and rightfully so. And I'm certain many people are glad that you became a film composer, because previously you mentioned you didn't know whether or not you wanted to become one, and many people couldn't be happier about that choice. And let me just thank you again from the bottom of my heart for your contributions and for doing this interview. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation as well.
I certainly did, Jonathan. Thank you very much. You're very kind, and to all the lovers of film music and those who appreciate my work. I'd like to say thank you very much. It is a great pleasure, a great honor to be able to work in films and to do quality work. So, and my great thanks to all the people who literally put a hand in their pocket and buy this music to enjoy it. It's I never take it for granted.
Thank you very much for your time, Patrick. Goodbye.